We are keeping a close eye on Rexer. This is this bearing manufacturer out of the Midwest that is right now the subject of Donald Trump's tweets back and forth because it wants to move 300 jobs south of the border or overseas in general. Donald Trump doesn't like the idea, but he's been getting a great deal of heckling right now from fellow Republicans. Sarah Palin saying, among others, that even what he did in the case of carrier conditioner sort of reeks of crony capitalism. And then you have Senator Ben Sasse, a Republican from the fine state of Nebraska, who was tweeting out his own misgivings about this, saying that President-elect Trump certainly means well, but is worried that a 35% tariff will only raise prices on American families. Nevertheless, Donald Trump shows no signs of blinking or backing down on this. To former Bush 43 Special Assistant Ron Christie, about the Washington Examiner Susan Ferrechio, and of course Charlie Gasparino. Charlie, you and I were getting into this sort of thing last week, that it can cut both ways. You save jobs, but you also raise concerns that you're going to do this every time, which could be good if you keep saving jobs, but you are intrinsically picking favorites here, and that concerns a lot of Republicans, right?
Yeah, and you're hurting stock prices. I mean, here's the interesting thing. We should point out that John F. Kennedy actually did this with U.S. Steel back in the day.
That's right.
And brought them not to their knees, but they came back and he wanted some price controls on some of the products, and from what I remember. And by
the way, we should explain that U.S. Steel willy-nilly raised prices.
Right. He
gives a big speech, follows up with a phone call. Right. Bottom line, U.S. Steel rescinds those price increases.
And caves. Now, here's something that's even more interesting about this, because we've been talking about to lawyers. If you notice with the share price of Rexnor went down dramatically after those tweets on Sunday. If Donald Trump goes out and picks out companies and starts manipulating their stock, starts driving their stock down, that's getting to a point where, it opens it up for class action lawsuits, because you are actually hurting a company, going out there to drive the stock down, hurt the shareholders, to advance a political agenda. It gets into gray areas. Now, I don't think the SEC is going to launch an investigation into Trump just yet, but you are getting into an interesting legal gray area if that is his intent, to drive down the stock price, to basically force these companies to the table. That's not me saying it. That's a lot of lawyers we've been talking to today, Neil.
Susan, what do you make of that? And now, obviously, Donald Trump is kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. If he did nothing, then he would be faulted for letting this happen under his eventual watch. He's just a president-elect right now. If he goes to the degree he has, as Charlie points out, some are going to argue you're messing up with capitalism and the free flow of money and trying to strong-arm it. He could just as easily go back and say, well, I'm just reminding them, give me time. I'm trying to tell them that I'm going to lower taxes, lower regulations. If you must leave, could you wait it out and see how I do?
Well, he has a messaging advantage here, because no other administration has done anything really to stop the outflow of jobs. And he ran on this. He said, I'm going to keep jobs in America. And what's the first thing he does? He strikes a deal with a company to keep hundreds of jobs in America. So getting down to these tariffs or threats of a tariff for outgoing companies, I just came from a meeting on Capitol Hill where the majority leader said that he really doesn't support the idea of a tariff, and he doesn't really think the idea of a tariff is going to sell well on Capitol Hill. I think we all can agree on that.
But it needn't come to that, right? It might be just the threat of it, and that would get companies to think twice, right?
That's what they think they can do to circumvent all this, Neil, is, of course, tax reform. If they make it more attractive for companies to remain here, we're not going to be watching them, flee to Mexico. And I think that's how Republicans want to get around the whole quantity of this tariff threat.
Ron Christie, though, it is a slippery slope. You got to be careful. I welcome any president, let alone a president-elect who goes out of his way to try to save jobs, but it can boomerang on you. Now, with his pitch, and maybe you know it better than I, is I'm going to dramatically lower taxes, I'm going to dramatically lower regulations. You'd be crazy to leave in the middle of an environment like this where I'm going to do all that for you. That's one thing. But is he using the strong arm of government and threats to get another thing?
Well, good afternoon, Neil, and that is exactly the slippery slope that I'm worried about. I'm glad that he had the opportunity to speak with the CEO of United Technologies and keep those jobs in where they were. But on the other hand, the President of the United States should not be picking winners and losers. The President of the United States should not be impacting what is, frankly, what we do best here in the United States, which is a capital market and capitalism.
But is he picking winners and losers? What if he applied this across all industries, all who are considering leaving, whether you're a bearings manufacturer or you make solar panels?
No, he shouldn't do it. He shouldn't do it. Charlie, well, let me answer this.
Sure.
He shouldn't do it because the President of the United States should not be saying, if you leave, I'm going to retaliate against you, or if you think about leaving, I'm going to retaliate and take retribution against you. That's not what our leader, the President of the United States, should be doing. No picking winners and losers.
And is it legal? I mean, I will just say this.
Yeah.
Listen, the President of the United States does not have, cannot spend all day and all night calling up companies or tweeting out about companies that are about to leave. There are lots of companies that are public that are looking to do this. The question is, if he picks out a few, like Rexor, whatever the company's name is, and goes out there and says, you're going to get screwed if you do this, the stock goes down 20%, and it's basically a form of strong-arming, and it's...
But that's the risk the company is taking by even considering it, right?
Well, he's got to know that if you're going to go, the president goes after you, he's got to know that he's manipulating the stock downward, and that's a great
I hear what you're saying,
area.
Charlie, but Susan, what I would look at it is there any harm, and maybe it's just beneath the office, we're told, certainly beneath the time and effort of a president-elect to call to save American jobs, whatever the heck happens to the stock price, or to call to remind them and send a message to everybody else. I mean it when I say I want to save American jobs. I mean it when I want to say I'm going to do everything in my power to avoid that happening. If these companies still leave, after all I do and every measure I've taken, that's what they want to do. I'm not serious about tariffs. If that's the interpretation, so be it. What's wrong with the president-elect in this case, doing everything he can to avoid that?
If he stems the outflow of jobs, he keeps jobs in America, nothing's wrong with that.
All right. But he's not.
I don't know.
Well, so far he has.
1,100 people in Indiana are looking at a Christmas that they weren't looking at before.
You're right on the numbers, but on that specific case. But is he going to go down the line to every company and say, okay, you do this or else? And
every
if he does
single
that,
one. I would give him a list every day. I'd give him a list every day. This 7-Eleven in New Jersey is going to lay off 4 people.
If he does, Neil, it's the wrong thing to do.
It's what?
He does, it's the wrong thing to do. I'm with Brother Gasparino on this. The wrong thing to do.
You don't care about people. You'd rather see them lose their jobs. I don't know what got you all prayed to. No, seriously, guys, it's an interesting debate, isn't it? Thank you very, very much.